Greetings, brothers and sisters, and other Hollywood celebrities dropping like M&F flies.
They're dropping like flies.
Listen, people are dropping like flies out there.
I am
Boop.
pissed off.
We're dropping like flies around here.
We're dropping like flies here.
Jeez, sir, 2 more just went down. Dropping like flies.
Too many people around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast.
Biden's being Biden's being an extremist.
Crush that fly.
I usually would cover this sort of thing on my other channel, but this came in last night, and it is such a, I mean, as bad as the journalism has been, and I've mocked it now for 8 years on the, both the, I mean, I don't get to Fox as much, but Fox has always sucked, but mostly CNN and MSNBC. And then, of course, all the other news networks that I get to occasionally. But CNN and MSNBC are the worst, and the ones I talk about the most. So this is a new low.
President Biden has just acknowledged his 7th grandchild, one that he previously had avoided talking about. It's a 4-year-old. She
Previously avoided talking about. What he should be saying there is that there has been pressure on him to acknowledge this kid. He's been asked questions over and over again, and it's going to be an issue in his political campaign. Hunter Biden is like a disaster, and they've covered this up in ways that is shocking even to me. How they've avoided talking about this 6'1" crackhead who's the president's son, who's involved in money laundering and all kinds of other nefarious activities, allegedly, right? And so this guy right here is a walking story. He's a walking joke for comedians that don't want to cover him. I mean, he's the president's crackhead son. And he banged a stripper named Dallas who lives in Arkansas. And, that is, every time I say it, it makes me, like there's the humorous feeling that you get when you say something or hear something funny, right? When you think about something funny. And that's a funny line. And it's not my line. It's the truth. It's history, right? It's not something I made up. It's something that actually happened. This guy, the president's son, was high on crack, and I don't even want to call it high, inebriated on crack, and he banged a stripper named Dallas from Arkansas, and he didn't remember it, didn't remember banging her, didn't remember her at all. And then she comes back and says, hey, I'm pregnant with your baby, and he denies it, but the paternity test says it's true. And then he doesn't want to send his financial documents because it's going to hurt his father's presidential campaign when they see all the foreign money he's gotten for being a good crackhead, because he was, he admitted being a crackhead, and he wrote a book about it, and he went on Jimmy Kimmel's show. Instead of Jimmy Kimmel making fun of him, Jimmy Kimmel got on his knees and serviced this guy and praised him for coming forward and discussing his crack addiction so honestly and openly. And during that time when he was on crack, he was making bank from foreign companies that were connected to foreign governments. And so that is and then he dropped a laptop with all this information on it into a bathtub and left it at a computer repair shop, amongst other things. And he was suicidal because he was banging his brother's widow, his dead brother's widow, and she became concerned that he was suicidal, so she took his handgun and threw it in a trash can across the street from where they were, which was next to a high school, and a homeless guy got it, and the Secret Service had to go investigate. And there's all these open cases about this guy leading up to the presidential election, and nobody said boop about any of it, right? Including these clowns. And so this is, on the heels of all that, right? And now Biden is finally getting around to acknowledging that he's got a crack stripper baby granddaughter in Arkansas.
He is the child of President Biden's son, Hunter, that he had the child with the woman he says he had an encounter with.
Stripper. And he didn't say he had an encounter with. She came out with DNA evidence. And he was like, oh, I guess that happened. I don't know. I was too cracked up to remember. It's a stripper. Like, say it's a stripper. He was at a, VIP section spending tens of thousands of his foreign money that he was getting to give access to his dad so that there was, compromising the government. And his dad's credibility as a politician and a leader and all these things. And with that money, he ended up banging some strippers. One of them got pregnant. So say it's a stripper. Like say she was a former stripper. She now is, a baby mama. Like her professional job is $10,000. Used to be $20,000 a month child support from Hunter Biden because he's making so much money on his new art career, in air quotes.
While he was battling his cocaine addiction, remember?
No, it's a crack addiction. Now, crack cocaine, it's a form of cocaine. I believe that's what they call it, crack cocaine. But it was a crack addiction. He wrote a book on it about his crack addiction. Crack is far more addictive than, I guess, pretty much anything else, maybe fentanyl, I don't know, heroin. But crack is, I think, the most addictive drug. People have ruined their lives over crack. Cocaine is one thing, crack is another, right? And so to say it's a cocaine addiction, so this guy's just lying and misleading and minimizing. I mean, it's the minimization of this story. This is a huge story. It has implications about almost, what you can consider traitorous behavior. It's borderline traitorous behavior. And that's only because we don't know what Biden did for the Hunter Biden money that he got from these foreign companies. So it's possibly traitorous. We'll have to see how it all plays out, right?
Back in April, President Biden said he only had 6 grandchildren, not 7. Take a listen.
I have 6 grandchildren, and I'm crazy about them. And I speak to them every single day.
So you're only awake like 4 hours a day. So that means what? You call your 6 grandchildren for, let's say, 5 minutes apiece. That's a half hour. So you only got 3.5 hours left to eat and do all your other presidential activities.
Again, the president now acknowledging his 7th grandchild, first reported by People magazine. Let's go to Peter Alexander at the White House. And Peter, I understand the White House has released a statement.
That's right. We just received that statement from the White House.
You admit this guy's a disaster. Like, admit that he's senile. He can barely walk. They have to put smaller stairs up there because he's a toddler. He can't make it up the stairs. And even with the smaller stairs, he still fell. He slips. He poops his depends. He snoozles and gropes kids and women and children of all ages. And he's just a, complete tool. He can't complete full sentences, and he's a disaster, like on every level. Don't minimize this thing. It's over. This guy should be done. For some reason, he still has 40% of Democrats who thinks he's doing a good job. He's got some favorability from like 40% of Democrats. Everyone else, 50-something percent, almost 60%, know this guy's a disaster. And the media, the CNN and MSNBC, don't want to say it. Like, we've known this since 2019. When he's wandering around stage, challenging people to fights, getting angry. These are all signs of dementia. And he sucked before that. He wasn't an all-star and then got dementia. He was a, walking gaffe who was always a liar and plagiarist who had to leave his first presidential campaign for plagiarizing stuff. I mean, he's a disaster on every level. We've known it. He wasn't a good candidate before he had dementia. And now he's got dementia. And he's got a crackhead son, a weird family, and a total, on every level, if you look into this guy, it's deplorable. And you keep on backing him and covering for him, right? Like, that was such a lightweight way to say this guy didn't acknowledge a crack baby grandchild, that his dysfunctional addict son who's making bank off of his father's name and selling access to his dad, which has compromised his office. I mean, this guy should be impeached. He should be thrown out of, public office. His whole family should be disappeared. Like the Biden family, it's an embarrassment to America.
House, specifically from President Biden himself, and I want to read some of it to you in part. And again, though, to headline the significance here, this is the first time that the president is publicly acknowledging the existence of this 7th grandchild. And it reads in part, our son Hunter and Navy Jones' mother, London, are working together to foster a relationship that's in the best interest of their daughter, preserving her privacy as much as possible going forward.
London's a stripper.
London refers to London Roberts, that is the Arkansas woman who filed a paternity suit.
What she was working in, her working name was Dallas. She named herself Dallas because she was a stripper in New York City, I believe. She was working in New York City as a stripper named Dallas from Arkansas. And Hunter Biden got busy while he was under the influence of crack. And, the rest is history, right?
Against the president's son Hunter back in May of 2019. This has become a...
Wait, did I miss something? Did you not read that part? This part right here. This is not a political issue. It's a family matter. Yeah, of course you don't want to make it a political issue because it involves Hunter. I mean, it's screaming, everything about Hunter Biden is screaming criminal and like just a horrible person. People who are criminal, have criminal tendencies and are scammers and are, they've called Trump a grifter, which he is. On this network, they're constantly calling Trump a grifter. The Hammer guy calls Trump a grifter, and Trump is a grifter. That's a good description of him. Hunter Biden's a better grifter. Hunter Biden is the most successful crackhead and addict of all time because he's gotten foreign companies to bankroll his crack and hooker addiction. And he's got a father who covers up and a media who covers up for everything he does that's criminal, including selling art to, people who are, a way of laundering money into his family, right? And so he is so successful on every level. The Secret Service is covering up for him. The FBI is covering up for him. And, all the rest of it. He is the most successful crackhead of all time, an addict, other than some king in the past or something like that, that I don't know about. But as far as, we know in modern history, this guy is the most successful addict. He's been in and out of rehab 8 or 9 times. He has criminal and deviant tendencies. And when you're an addict, it pushes you to do things for your addiction that even if you are a moral person or somebody with ethics, it'll push you to do things that are, are deplorable. And this guy doesn't have morals and ethics, and neither does Jojo Magoo. And to say this is not a political issue, it's a family matter, right? No, this is involving, the influence foreign companies and governments have on your administration because they've paid your crackhead son to give you money and launder money through him so that you can have wealth in your family and, all the rest of it. And they have money laundering schemes going on like the Ukrainian war and other things. They don't even need Hunter. Hunter doesn't even need to do this. They can put him on a little private island and let him crack his way to, until he dies, right? But for some reason, he keeps on going and inventing new ways to make scams for himself. Jill and I only want what is best for all of our grandchildren, including Navy. Well, that's not true. You're just mentioning her because you've been not mentioning her the whole time. And now you have to say you have 7 grandchildren, one that you've never met that you're ashamed of because your son's a frickin' disaster. And the news media here, this is way worse than they're saying. And this is just this is a big enough scandal. This thing alone would have taken down any president, even someone like Bill Clinton and other people before that, right? All the politicians. This is the kind of thing that would take down a politician. Just this thing alone. This is something that they would embarrass them. The media would run with because it's so scandalous. And there's so much more here with Hunter Biden. And then there's Jojo Magoo, who sucks epically. So, there's, without the media just covering up for him and minimizing everything and attacking Trump for the things that Jojo Magoo does. And Trump does them too, but Jojo Magoo is doing them worse, right?
2019. This has become a political issue of sorts, Tom. Republicans have been critical of President Biden for not publicly acknowledging this child, this granddaughter, Hunter's child, out of wedlock. The president, though, responding to that, says this is not a political issue. It is a family matter. He says, Jill, referring to the First Lady, and I only want what is best for...
Okay, I covered this. They just... that was one of the worst reports I've ever seen. Because of everything that they don't say here. Everything that they should say but don't. So to add to this, and again, this is stuff I usually cover on my other channel, but I saw these back-to-back. YouTube recommended these back-to-back to me yesterday.
We do start with Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is saying that his request for Secret Service protection is being denied. Kennedy says presidential candidates get protection after his father, the late Robert F. Kennedy, was assassinated while campaigning in '68. News Nation's Elizabeth Pran is joining us live from Atlanta now. And Elizabeth, RFK Jr. says that he made a request months ago at this point.
So think about that. That because of his dad's death when he was campaigning, that you can get Secret Service protection if you're a candidate, right? Which is, which is a good thing based on what happened there, right? And Kennedy is very vulnerable because he's attacking the big pharma and he's saying things, that would piss off powerful people. Now, I don't think they would assassinate him now because, he'd have to be doing better in terms of like going to win the nomination. If he won the nomination, then that would be a concern. And then if he won the presidency, even more so, right? And it looked like he was going to win. And given his family history, this is a no-brainer. And Jojo Magoo is not giving him Secret Service protection, right? I mean, he's a Democrat that doesn't mind wasting governmental money, doesn't mind making bang for his son Hunter, who's a crackhead. But he's not going to protect a Kennedy, right? Regardless of whether you like him or he's running against you, he's a part of the Kennedy family. And this rule exists because of his dad. Like, just think about how low he's sunk here.
He did. Good afternoon, Natasha. You're right. About 88 days ago. And as you mentioned...
So he's been waiting 88 days to get protected. And, the rest of it. Madonna says she's lucky to move her body after medical emergency. Now, anybody can dance. You can see, 80-year-old people dancing, right? Here she is dancing here. That's her dancing. You can move your body a little bit to music. I mean, whatever qualifies as dancing. You see toddlers even dance, right? But there she is blowing you a kiss with those monstrous lips and her messed up silicone lips and face, right? But when she dances now, it isn't like when she was a professional dancer. Like, she can't dance like Hunter Biden's stripper mom. It's not professional, and you can't do it for long. Any kind of physical activity when you get older, maybe if you do yoga and you're really flexible and, you're like some kind of, in terms of your diet but people who played sports, you watch older athletes and played sports a lot or did things like dance. Dance is really hard. Ballet is like really brutal on the body. And, dancing, if you did things that are, where your body's injured and you're pushing it and, you're wearing on your joints and these things. When you do something professionally, and Madonna danced quite a bit in her life, and she's really old, everything just stiffens up. I mean, it stiffens up anyway. It's hard to just get out of bed. And you can do physical activity, but then you're sore the next day, the next 2 days, next 3 days, depending on your age. Madonna's older than me. And so now she's like, she came back from being basically found dead, right? And now she says she's dancing again, but come on. The same way, it's like these corpses are just walking around out there, these ghouls. This is what Morrissey, the singer Morrissey, said about Sinead O'Connor. She had only so much self to give. She was dropped by her label after selling 7 million albums for them. She became crazed, yes, but uninteresting never. She had done nothing wrong. She had proved vulnerability, and there is a certain music industry hatred for singers who don't fit in. This I know only too well. And they are never praised until death, when finally they can't answer back. The cruel playpen of fame gushes with praise for Sinead today, with those moronic labels of icon and legend. You praise her now only because it's too late. You had the guts to support her when she was alive, and she was looking for you. The press will label artists as pests because of what they withhold, and would call Sinead sad, fat, shocking, insane. It just goes on from there. What this is about is she was guest singer on Saturday Night Live or something. I think she was guest singer. So I went back and found the video. This is from 1992, Saturday Night Live.
In the victory of good over evil. Fight the real enemy.
She had a lifetime ban from Saturday Night Live after that, right? So I think maybe one of the only people that ever had something like that. And, you know, this was in a time where that was, you know, unacceptable. Like they could do this now, it'd be no problem. And then the next week, Joe Pesci was the host, and he slammed her, right? Because Joe Pesci apparently is a Catholic. And so that was the sort of rebuttal to that. You know, they didn't know at Saturday Night Live she was going to do that. But she did that because of the sexual abuse that's so rampant in the Catholic Church. And I know it's bad in Ireland because, like I said, few people who do the Sajmarg meditation I met over the year. One woman wrote a book about it, and I think a bunch of them had been sexually abused. She was sexually abused by a priest. And the priests have a lot of power in the Catholic community in Ireland. You know, my mom was Irish Catholic. And after that, she was kind of blacklisted. It shows you the difference of the times, because if somebody did that now, they'd be celebrated. You know, if somebody did the opposite and praised the Pope, they would be condemned. And, you know, I didn't have a problem with what Sinead O'Connor did because, you know, the Catholic Church has been a disaster with the priests and some of the other things about it. You know, I had a good experience with the Catholic Church. Like I personally, you know, my mom used to have prayer meetings and nuns over our house and things, you know. There's these 5 nuns and they were great. Like I had no problem with them. But, you know, I know other people had nightmare kind of situations. But I was grateful for my Catholic upbringing. My mom, you know, did prayer meetings, like I said. And she was she went to these charismatic Christian retreats and they were all right. And then, you know, I turned 14, I started smoking pot, and then I went in another direction, only to come back to God when I was 29 years later and doing the gratefulness meditation. So Sinead O'Connor then sort of broke down mentally. I think she had some mental breakdowns, and I guess her kid died and, you know, had a pretty miserable life. And now, you know, she's dead, and the people are praising her like what a great, you know, person she is. They forgive you mostly when you're dead. You know, some people never get forgiven. But once somebody dies, it's like, oh, no matter how much the media hated them, they remember them fondly after they die. So this little girl wants a Barbie donut.
Can I get the Barbie one? Hi, Barbie. Hi, Ken. Want to go Barbie ride?
You want the Barbie one?
I want the Barbie one. You know I like Barbie.
I don't think y'all getting the Barbie one now.
Because the Barbie one is shaped like something. It's shaped some way, kind of way, for some reason. They decided to shape it like that, you know. I wonder who decided that. Like, look at all the rest of the donuts, and then look at the one labeled Barbie. Dianne Feinstein, 90, appears confused at Senate hearing, had to be prompted to vote.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye. Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
say?
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense, and it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
aye.
Thank you.
Senator Durbin.
So she started to read stuff, and she was just there to vote, right? It was a yes or no thing, and she started to read from her whatever it was, right? And she had to be told what to do. And she's been in the Senate longer than anybody. She's, you know, and they're covering this slightly on the right. But the left, after covering Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell sucks, but they covered him. They don't cover JoJo Magoo like they should. And Dianne Feinstein's a walking ghoul as well, right? And we're not even talking about Fetterman. I haven't talked about Fetterman now in a while. I mean, this is just like, you know, getting really bad. You know, like where Fetterman, who's probably the worst of the worst, is being, I guess they've hidden him away and they're not letting him speak in public or whatever it is. But, you know, it's a disaster. The Democrats are falling apart worse than the Republicans. Chase Bank shuts down accounts of natural health advocate Dr. Joseph Marcola, refuses to say why. I think he can't get access to his money. When my wife told me about this, I said, well, why is he banking with Chase? Like, Chase is the worst one. Chase is worse than Goldman Sachs or any of these, you know, these banks have horrible reputations in the truth community. Chase is probably the worst one, has more of derivatives on their books and things. And, you know, and he did the same thing to Kanye. They did the same thing to Ye. You guys remember that. So I have no idea why this guy was even banking with Chase. And I don't know if they've frozen his accounts or taken his money. But, you know, like that's just a warning to everybody. Eagles founding member Randy Messner dead at 77.
Just right next to the woods, you can see we have an Uber Eats robot standoff going on. These two are like in some kind of, you know, quick draw mode right now. I don't even want to be in the middle of this. This is crazy.
Uber Eats has robots. Like robots are starting to be used more and more in the city for city folk. They're vicious, aggressive seagulls force Sullivan Castle Island to suspend outdoor dining. So I guess the seagull has realized human beings are a bunch of bonus holes, right? That collectively we're bonus holes. And the seagulls are just like, we can get away with anything. We've seen it. I've already documented it. Here it's being covered by the news.
Seagulls stealing your French fries may be an annoying summertime tradition, but the staff at Sullivan's restaurant on Castle Island has had enough of the pilfering pests.
Christina Rex shows us tonight why they're taking really drastic action this year to block those birds.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Actually, yeah, it's a bird.
Seagulls are taking people's lunch money, and they have to change the behaviors and do things to prevent seagulls from bullying them.
I would think it's extreme, but it's not. They're vicious, so you know it's really crazy.
Sullivan's Castle Island in Southie is the spot for a sunny day lobster roll or hot dog, and now it's a no-fly zone.
Yes, that is really crazy.
What do you mean no-fly zone?
Beware seagulls reads the sign. Tables for outdoor dining now wrapped in caution.
This news story said enough is enough. They've had enough. They're not going to take it anymore. Well, you're running away from the seagulls. You're closing up your outdoor dining. Like people want to eat outdoors because, you know, it's the summer and you're by the ocean. And one of the few things around the Boston area that, you know, you have access to the ocean, right? These cold weather cities in the winter. And the one thing is you have like nice, you know, you have nice, you know, summers and things right by the ocean. And one of the best things is eating outside. And this is one of those, you know, eating hot dogs by the beach. And seagulls are making them close their outdoor seating.
Tape unusable because of bold birds. The restaurant has a policy.
If you get attacked by a seagull and they take your food, we'll remake your order for free.
But this past weekend, it became too much.
They'll perch up on there.
Seagulls are driving them out of business.
Those poles right there, right? And up on the roof, and then they're like fighter jets, like boom, boom, boom. They'll come in, they'll take all the old...
Why did you guys have video of this? Your leprechaun?
People's food, all the children's food. It's crazy.
Seagulls just start taking... They realize people are bonus holes. And they're just taking our lunch money, right? Mysterious illness triggered by tick bite could affect thousands, but many doctors are unaware of it. A little-known life-threatening food allergy that is triggered by a tick bite could be affecting hundreds of thousands of people in the U.S. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention warned in Morbidity and Mortality Weekly report on Thursday. I think this is bogus. This is really about the boop, right? This is not, you know. Come on. We know. You know, ticks, I've questioned, like, how did ticks get Lyme's disease? Like, ticks are, they either latch onto you or they don't. Ticks are these flat, I mean, you can't really even kill them. They're so flat. You need like a coin or something to squish them. And they're, you know, they're like really hard and flat, and they don't die very easily. And but if they're, you know, they're not like mosquitoes that bite a bunch of people and fly around and bite somebody else. Once they latch onto you, they start sucking your blood, and then they just balloon up, like you've seen this on dogs and things, animals. And so I don't understand where they're getting the disease from. Do they carry diseases at birth? Are they getting it from the grass? They live in rural areas. They live on your lawn. They live in, you know, wooded areas. It's not like they bite a deer and then they bite you. And so I don't even understand Lyme's disease. I don't believe Lyme's disease comes from ticks. I bet a bunch of people who have been diagnosed with Lyme's disease were never even close to a tick. And so, you know, I find this, I'm calling BS on this thing. Tyrant Jacinda Ardern has been appointed to the new censorship role at Harvard University. Well, let's find out who Jacinda Ardern is. She's the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Harvard is hiring her to censor. So that's as far as my research I'm willing to go here. You know, there's probably some reason why somebody sent me this. They didn't tell me what that reason is, and I don't even know who it was, and I don't know who this is, and I don't care about Harvard or, you know, New Zealand, I guess, either. So you can figure it out for yourself. Okay, so moving on here. LeBron James' I Promise School, which cost $8 million in taxpayer money, shows shocking results for 8th grade math exams. This is in his Akron, Ohio. And there's local Akron articles about this. So he started a school for so-called underprivileged kids in Akron, Ohio, his hometown. And the school is struggling to, again, you know, I'm not a big testing person, and there's different forms of education, but that's not this kind of a school, right? So this school is failing miserably, right? And, you know, he's maybe putting whatever amount of money, his own money into it, but he's got, you know, other taxpayer money going. And, you know, he's not going to come out and be honest about what happened to his kid, you know, because he's such a shill and he's so, you know, he's so scummy himself. Here's another article here. There's another article here. It says the same thing about 8th grade students. He says black students attending the school score within the bottom 5%. So it's, you know, like this is the kind of messaging they have, we are family, but he's not educating the kids that go there. Here's Jojo Magoo.
The bad news is I'm coming back to shake your hand, but I forgot I didn't sign the order. All that talk and no action.
So he gave a speech, and he didn't sign the executive order. He started to walk away, and he realized, or someone told him, he's failed at his job once again. So this is the cover of the New York Post. Flea deal, crestfallen. Hunter Biden flies home in private jet with cameras in tow after his sweetheart plea deal shockingly collapsed. So, you know, that's Hunter. But there's more Hunter Biden news here. Hunter Biden laptop full of secret agreements and contracts with foreign businesses. And it has all this info in it. There's another article here that says Hunter Biden may have stored Joe Biden conversations on encrypted messaging apps, laptop analysis. Hunter Biden used no fewer than 16 private message apps, many of them highly encrypted, which could contain his most sensitive business and personal correspondence, according to analysis of his famous hard drive by the nonprofit Marco Polo Group. You know, this should be major media news. This should just end Joe Biden's presidency. There's enough here that you don't, you know, with the art sales and his crack habit, his illegitimate child, and, you know, all these things. Had this been any other time and any other president, this would have ended their career. Like this, you know, there's no getting around these kind of scandals. But they just won't cover it. The mainstream media, I showed you how they whitewash it. King Charles III never admired Prince Andrew, even in palmy days, royal expert says. He says he's never looked up to his younger brother, according to royal expert. Why would he look up to him? You know, these guys hate each other. I mean, they're all jealous of each other. You know, there's one that's a chosen one in the family, the heir, right? And they all grow up with, you know, they suck as a family. They're horrible people. So I just got a couple of comments. I just want to say one thing about Cubies, because the first person wrote this and said, please, Paul, stop about Sound of Freedom. It's way too much. We got your point. You didn't talk about anything, so many videos. Just move on, please. It's becoming really annoying. And the person spelled annoying, E-N-O-Y-I-N-G. Just like a typical QB. And I'm not a big speller. You know, you guys, I have my own spelling issues, but there was that. And then someone else wrote, you need to research who funded the Sound of Freedom. Well, no, I don't, because I already covered it. But even if I didn't, it doesn't matter. Like when people say you need to do this, or you need to watch this, or you need, you know, people don't even understand how they come across, right? You don't know what I need. It's presumptuous. You might say, hey, you might enjoy this. I think you might enjoy this. I might say to my wife, I wouldn't say you need to watch this, but I would say, like, you know, something I know she's going to like, right? You know, once in a while somebody will send me something I like, but often they don't. Oftentimes people send me stuff and I'm like, why would you send me this, right? Because I'm not going to cover it in a video and I'm not entertained by it. And so I don't need to know who funded Sound of Freedom. I already talked about that. But the point isn't even about who funded it or the guy's a shill or any of these other things. And this person, you know, I wasn't going to talk about it in this video. I had that one comment, the second comment. But while I was making this video, the first comment came in. And the person said, you know, you're talking about too much. And you just made me talk about it again. Like, by the, you know, goofy comment. Because I've been fading away from it for the last couple of videos because I don't really, you know, I'm ready to move on. But I still keep on getting these comments from Sound of Freedom QBs. People say, no, this isn't the QBs. This has nothing to do with QBs. It's exactly has everything to do with QBs. It's how the QBs roll. And the QBs are now trying to reinvent themselves, as is Trump. And this is going to roll around. It's going to be a pain to boop for the, you know, next couple of years or whatever it is till the election, because Trump is going full QB and the QBs are been emboldened. You know, I just covered that comment, and it was a good comment to cover because the QB said that the QBs never have ever had the boop, and yet their hero, the center of their universe, is Trump. He's the guy who's going to save you from the deep state. You know, I said this in the last video, and I don't know if it was here or the other. I think it was on my other channel yesterday. And the person was saying, but I got the comment here, and the person was saying that, you know, they would, no QB ever got the beep. Well, then why are you not following your leader, who many are calling the Messiah, and they are, you know, they are giving him a divine status, like he's the second coming of Jesus or something, like that's been said about him. And so, what, you don't trust his Operation Warp Speed, which is probably what he considers his signature accomplishment, certainly the last couple of years of his presidency. And so they just keep on moving the goalposts. But even after they got completely humiliated and embarrassed, and it was clear, should have been clear to everyone, that they got worked by the intelligence community, and it's an intelligence community asset. And I've laid down all the, you know, solid points about that. It's undeniable to people who aren't in denial. And, you know, they got embarrassed for a while. They stopped commenting. They went away, and I didn't talk about them. I didn't say anything about them because, you know, and they had done damage. The damage was still there. I and everyone else here have a right to be bummed at QBs forever because you guys just made it, the truth community suck a lot worse, and now we're being, you know, deplatformed and things because of your behavior and your stupidity. And we warned you. I warned you all, you know, for years before it happened. I said exactly what's going to happen, and it played out exactly like I said it was going to happen. And, you know, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. You just were too dopey and wrapped in your own emotions and, you know, your own feelings. But now Sound of Freedom has come around, and it's reinvigorated the QB movement, and they're just all, you know, up in arms about this thing, and they're bringing other people, and they're not telling the new people who are, you know, similar to them that this is really an extension of the Q movement, and Trump's running again, and they're going to be intolerable because they don't learn. Because what a QB never does, a true QB, because those of you who've been QB adjacent or entertained some of the QB theories, or, you know, whatever you did, whatever way you got, you know, roped in for a little bit, you can do something that no true QB has ever done. And that's admit that you're wrong and that you got duped by the intelligence community and you actually worked against the things that you believed. And you hurt the causes that you believe in. You hurt the right wing, you hurt the truth community, you hurt Trump. Trump hurt himself. And you guys all got, completely worked and owned. And it's humiliating, right? It's just bad. Like, it's embarrassing. You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed, Trump. Trump embarrassed himself. I mean, the whole thing. And again, everyone makes mistakes. I don't care about it. It's just that you never learn. You keep on coming back for more. And you pretend it isn't the same thing. And this, you're a plague on the truth community. Like, you come to my channel, other people's channels, but we're not the same. Because the rest of us can admit we were wrong. The rest of us can admit, that, for me, it would be with Dodgy and what he did with Heartfulness. And, of course, there's reasons for that. Like, I made reasonable, there's reasonable assessments why, I stuck with him, even though the signs were already there. But I had seen other things from him. Like, he started off as a spiritual person, a good preceptor and other things. And I saw the work that had been done on him, and he had been elevated to a high level of spiritual attainment. He just failed. He just, he took the low road. And, I gave them benefit of the doubt longer than you would because, we were kind of like friends and he had done things for me. He had, I felt loyalty to him. And people who didn't like Dodgy right off the bat were, you didn't have the positive experiences I had with them. So there's a difference there, right? But when push came to shove, I had to accept something that pretty much everyone else who does Saj Marg, I would say 90% of the people won't ever admit because they're sheeple and they just won't admit it. And, he's the legitimate president of the system and he was endorsed by the previous masters, so they're just going to go with it, right? But sometimes, that's probably as hard a thing as I ever had to do in terms of confronting something that was painful for me to confront, but accepting it. And for QBs, they just never do that. And there's no self-reflection. And I did this early on the truth community when I was engaging in some of the behaviors of the lower level truthers that put stuff out there without fact-checking it themselves and announce things that are like they're facts when they don't know for sure they're facts, that really just you're parroting somebody else's whatever it is, talking points and things that have been put out there. And I changed the way I did things. And it hurt my channel because I wasn't agreeing with, the dogma, the truth community, things that people believed were true that I found out weren't true, that they were disinformation or they were just, irresponsible reporting and things. And so I started to take things, more seriously in terms of making a distinction between speculation and fact and, theory and fact and these things. And that was, better for me and worse for my channel. I mean, I guess better in the long run, but I wasn't attracting as many, viewers because there's so many dopes out there who want to live in some fantasy world where there are no such thing as, fact checking and, finding out if something's real or not. And they just want to be emotionally riled up and have people that agree with them. I mean, all the people that come here and they want somebody to tell them that their belief system is fine and they don't have to change it all. Well, you're eventually going to have a problem then, because I'm going to say something that confronts something that you either got wrong or you're attached to or something that, when you hear it's going to upset you. And that's just, what I do here. And it's, it's for the better for everyone. But to be a real truther, you have to see that you need to change, that you need to evolve, that you aren't all set or perfect and things like that. And QBs just don't do that. There's an enemy out there, and it's the left-wingers and the people who don't agree with them, and they turn on everybody that do, even former QBs. If you go to leave the Q movement, they attack you. I told you about that young guy. One of my viewers sent me a video of him. He was a young Christian guy, and he had 3 friends that they were friends before they got into Q. They were friends in the real world. And they hosted a podcast together. And after Q had been, the Q drops had been wrong time and time again, and nothing panned out the way that it was promised. And the guy just said, he saw the writing on the wall and he told the other two guys he was leaving the Q stuff behind because he didn't believe it anymore. And his friends immediately blackballed him and started talking boop about him, right? Like they immediately turned on him. And, they'd been wrong so much. So the issue with the Q movement, and for those of you who have dealt with them know, and for those of you who are, some of you have left but want to go back, or you miss it, or whatever it is, or those of you who are still in it, you guys are going to be wrong again, and you're just going to torture the rest of us. And I'm nipping that in the bud. And the Sound of Freedom was just the entry-level thing back into a new, way that the Q movement reinvents itself, right? That guy the people who made the Sound of Freedom might have been the people running the Q PSYOP. I bet they are. I bet they're connected in some way. I think their intelligence community. I'm pretty sure. CIA makes movies. The CIA, they made those two movies. They're directed by a woman, and she won an Oscar for them. The woman's name is Catherine Bigelow. She was the first woman to win an Oscar for directing, and she directed The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. I think she won it for The Hurt Locker. And they're both very pro-war, very neocon CIA movies. And if you search Catherine Bigelow and CIA, it says how the makers of Zero Dark 30 seduced the CIA. Zero Dark 30 CIA access triggered the international agency to backlash and all these things. And CIA slammed for sloppy dealings with the person who made the movie. The CIA was instrumental in making both of those movies. They're pro-war, pro-military industrial complex, and the woman won an Oscar for them. And I think she won an Oscar over Avatar, right? Like, that's how rigged it was, right? So, like that was when the whole stuff was happening with, I think it was the beginning of, the Me Too or whatever it was. And so, the rise of feminism in Hollywood. But you understand the CIA is integral, or these intelligence communities are integral in making TV shows and movies, and they put their agenda in them. And, there's funding issues, and there's all kinds of ways the CIA has of working, Hollywood directors and film writers and producers into including their stuff. And we know this, right? We know that that's, there's so many pro-spy movies and pro-CIA movies. And they, also agenda movies. And Sound of Freedom is that kind of movie. It's like the same kind of agenda-based psychological operation. And it's very similar to the Q movement. And the guy who's making the movie, the hero of the movie, all the ways that guy is, the Ballard guy. He said he worked for the NSA, right? And what's to say he stopped? Like, how do you know he's actually against the NSA or it's not working for them? We know at least he did work for them. And now he's made a movie that's going to help the NSA, and it's going to start all that Q stuff back up again. And they targeted this audience, made a lot of money, and all the rest of it, right? All the influence and all the way that they have created division with it. So, it's completely a CIA type of film. I don't care about what people believe and do, but the Q movement affected me, my job here, what I do here. The Cubies came to my channel. They were a nightmare to deal with. Their comments were, just all of it. And they hurt the whole truth community at large. And they just suck. They're like, they're unpleasant. And they're wrong, and they're being used against us even now. And so, again, I'm always going to come down hard on them whenever they start to rear their ugly heads, right? Like, they can go, sit in the dark and believe whatever they're going to believe. Just don't let it affect me and the rest of us here, right? Just keep it to yourself. Do your little stupid Q stuff. If you're not going to change, you're not going to change. That's your problem. But don't let it affect us, right? You got embarrassed and humiliated. It was like RFK was talking about how the neocons were so humiliated after the Iraq War, the Afghanistan failures, and stuff with Libya. And their whole agenda turned out to be they're wrong on everything. Of course, they were, in terms of America was best for America, they sucked. But in terms of the military-industrial complex and looting money, they made a killing, right? But they were embarrassed in terms of the, the media and everybody was over the neocons, right? Everyone knows that these wars were illegal and the lies that led up to them, and evil Dick Cheney and the rest of these guys, right? And, you know, just like when the bankers with their derivatives market crashed the economy in 2008, and they were given the money and the support to fix the problem they created, you know, the government turned to the people who created the problem to fix it, which was, you know, really stupid. The way that we had with COVID, when the medical community had created all these issues, and, you know, this was a lab leak or whatever, and they turned to the medical community to fix something that, you know, they themselves created. This is a constant problem. And so Biden embraced the neocons, which I saw in a, you know, RFK interview, and I went to look it up, and there's all these articles about it. It lists the people who are neocons who are now handling Joe Biden's foreign policies, and they've driven the war in Ukraine. The whole Ukrainian thing is a neocon wet dream, and they went after Putin, and then they got embarrassed because they've lost that. The Ukraine got spanked by Putin. Putin's stronger than ever, despite what the media says. And, you know, we ended up, it's not just the Ukraine war, but we're kind of assed out, right? China's coming up on the other side, and, you know, it's a huge failure. And they're trying to back away from it, but they'll be back again, wrecking it and doing stupid things. And because they never admit they're wrong, and they never look at themselves. And, you know, they're making bank. Whereas the QBs, I mean, maybe some of the QBs are making bank, but most of them are, you know, they're spending their money on this movement, and it's a complete failure. And so, you know, be warned, because they're coming back. You see it. They, you know, they didn't die. They didn't get embarrassed. And they got embarrassed, but they've licked their wounds, and now Trump's embracing them and talking deep state stuff, and they're all about it. And they're going to be back, and they're going to be, like, more annoying than ever. You know, so, you know, we just, I mean, it's like a pest that you just can't get rid of. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, Death Reporting from the Apocalypse, and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.